Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Friday, October 3rd, 2025, and I'm just going to go over briefly the state of the MAGA movement, at least in my opinion, uh, with the change of stance of President Donald J. Trump regarding the Ukraine conflict. As you may have heard, President Trump put out a Truth Social post where he said that he feels that Ukraine can take back or win back all the territory lost with NATO allied support. And who is NATO? Of course, NATO is the United States. Basically, if you see the European countries for what they are in their military capacity and their ability um, to deploy large number of trained troops to conflict zones. So basically, President Trump is saying that NATO, the United States, can win back all the territory lost by supporting Ukraine. And as many of you know, this war in Ukraine is a proxy war by the United States to have a territory on the border of Russia. The long-term goal here is to um, eventually cause upheaval in Russia and to split Russia into three different chunks that it can then corrupt and use these corrupt oligarchs to pull unlimited resources from Russia. So that was the plan. Um, Everything was working according to calculations and according to the calendar. And then Russia decided to invade Iraq and push back on NATO, meaning the United States. And this has carried on for several years through the Biden administration and now into the Trump administration. So basically, the MAGA movement, with its America First agenda, would be to benefit American businesses, to decrease the size of government, improve the efficiency of government, put American projects first, our infrastructure, our farmers, our factories, and to bring the American dream back into the range of possibility for your average American. So this was a lofty goal, certainly something that would take several administrations to achieve. But then the question is whether we are even on the course to getting that or whether we have failed. So part of the idea of getting out of the forever wars was to take all those endless resources which were used for these endless wars and put them to use, improving this country, improving the lives of the citizens here in the United States, and to show that the America First agenda was real. President Trump was going to pull out of Ukraine and was either going to help Ukraine and Russia come to an agreement, or was going to dump that project and take those resources and invest it in the United States. So anyway, we have several voices for America First. We have, of course, the president, who's the prime figure in the MAGA America First agenda. We have someone called Steve Bannon, who was kind of the guru of the America First agenda. And we also have Tucker Carlson, who hosted programs on several TV networks, and most recently Fox News, and then left Fox News to form his own media company. So with that, he's had more liberty and the possibility to impact the MAGA movement and provide, ideological guidance as to what people should do in that movement. We also have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been a no nonsense, um, common sense kind of individual. And finally, we have J.D. Vance. And then they were surrounded by a cast of characters like Matt Gaetz, Elise Stefanik, Charlie Kirk, Carrie Lake, Peter Navarro. Of course, we know that Charlie Kirk is no longer with us. Matt Gaetz was convinced to leave Congress to take a position in the Trump White House, and as soon as he had left Congress, they had passed over his candidacy for the Trump White House, basically um, removing him from the greatest area where he could impact policy, which was Congress. Some believe that that was intentional to get him out of sweep him out of the way, to push other agenda items. Peter Navarro has been on TV recently, outspoken about trying to carry on a stronger economic war against China, and Elise Stefanik and Carrie Lake, I guess you could call them less influential, although they do have, depending on the topic that is going on, they can provide some guidance, but they're not ideological leaders as far as the MAGA movement. So I'm just going to focus on President Trump, Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and J.D. Vance. And basically the point of the America First movement, as I said, is to realize that the United States doesn't have unlimited resources, and that the resources that it was throwing away in these endless wars, which weren't achieving anything, to bring them back to this country and to put them to good for the good of the country. And President Trump seemed to espouse that idea, that thinking. Of course, then he proposed a $1 trillion budget for the Pentagon, and I haven't heard of any major base closures around the globe. The United States has over 850 bases. President Trump could cut that in half or down to over 200, and we wouldn't notice much of a difference on the planet. All these 850 bases are like giant sponges absorbing huge amounts of our resources, which could certainly be used in this country. So the first thing is that the America First agenda connected with your typical hardworking Midwestern American who was tired of these forever wars and wanted to see improvements in this country instead of just wasting that carrying out who knows what in what country. So President Trump is basically the primary individual who can not only impact the MAGA movement ideologically, but also regarding policy. So he has taken quite a turn towards aggressive military policy. He now seemed to be threatening an invasion or a widespread attack on Venezuela. I think what they're trying to do is going to conduct a decapitation strike on Venezuela. He's ramping up the military capacity in the Middle East, gearing up for a possible strike on Iran, coordinated with Israel. And also, he is now pushing the full war strategy in Ukraine, thinking that if we just increase the support of Ukraine, they can win. So anyway, out of the 5 MAGA ideologues who impact the thinking of MAGA members, President Trump is primarily the key figure, and he seems to be going back on what he said during his campaign. And so that is one mega figure. The second mega figure, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon has made a lot of statements about the Ukraine conflict, and he's been warning President Trump about increased U.S. commitments in Ukraine as tripwires towards an ever increasing escalation that could eventually morph into a World War III scenario, and that President Zelensky had the chance to make a deal with Russia a long time ago, and he did not do it, and only escalated and in and maintained a very military line without recognizing the beefs that the Russians had in Ukraine regarding the ethnic Russians and having NATO on its border. So Steve Bannon has been more ideologically committed to a neutral position on the Ukraine conflict, and wanting to focus on improving this country, the United States. So Steve Bannon and President Trump seem to be at opposite ends regarding this conflict. Tucker Carlson has gone a little bit further than Steve Bannon in that he has made several trips to one or two trips to Russia and has listened to the arguments of the Russians about the root causes, and he has allowed Russian figures to put out their version through his network. So he seems to be further towards the further away from a neutral position and more towards a pro-Russian position. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she stated not too long ago that security guarantees for Ukraine from the United States would betray the MAGA principles and put the U.S. on the hook for whatever comes afterwards. And so she has specifically spoken against the security guarantees. So so the trio of Bannon, Carlson, and Greene seem to have a more unified position regarding the Ukraine conflict. Then we have J.D. Vance, who was a voice of reason and common sense in the U.S. Congress and has recently gone from one end of the spectrum to the other in a more neocon, pro-war, pro-Ukraine position, wanting to provide everything to Ukraine so that they can retake territory that has been lost. So not too sure exactly what happened with J.D. Vance, but of course he's the vice president. He really can't set policy, and his job is to support the president and what the president is calling for. He could say that his hands are tied, but he certainly could point out to President Trump that the ever-increasing escalation in Ukraine is starting to get us close to these tripwires, which Steve Bannon are talking about. So anyway, I think that the MAGA movement regarding the Ukraine conflict is quite confused. We don't have a single position. It all seems that they have different nuances from one person to another. Tucker Carlson seemed to understand that Russia was justified in their invasion. Steve Bannon, on the other hand, doesn't believe that there was any justification. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't believe that she has made a statement. So my memory may not serve me correctly in all these positions, but basically J.D. Vance took himself out of the MAGA ideologue position when he became vice president, and he had to follow along what President Trump was indicating. So he's there in a supportive role. and there, just in case something happens to President Trump, he can step in. So J.D. Vance in private could indicate other positions, but in public, he definitely is supporting the president. And so we basically have these two positions from President Trump to and J.D. Vance versus the Bannon, Carlson, and Greene position. And now we will see what position will really win out in MAGA, because if the United States starts to get pulled more and more into this conflict, then more resources will go out towards Ukraine. And the point of the MAGA America First agenda was to get all American resources out of useless foreign wars. And I believe that the MAGA movement sees that the United States has little or no national security interest in Ukraine. Ukraine can certainly be handled by the Europeans, and there's a much greater population, a much greater economic power in Europe. So if anyone could provide a backstop to Russia, it would be the European bloc. So why spend American money over in Ukraine when the Europeans can certainly do that task as understood, of just creating a block towards further Russian incursion into Europe. Of course, the word Europe is confused because Europe ends at the Ural Mountains, which is deep into Russia. So anyway, what exactly is Europe anyway? But I would say regarding the MAGA America First movement, there is signs that this is in tatters, as they say. What is America First? And finally, we have to think about the if we just focus on one group of farmers in this country, the soybean farmers, um, the Chinese were the main purchasers of the soybeans produced in the farms of this country. And recently, the United States did a bailout for Argentina, so that their economy wouldn't collapse. And when the bailout came, Argentina lowered the tariffs on their soybean exports, and so China dumped the U.S. Market and jettisoned off to Argentina to sweep up all of the Argentinian soybeans, leaving American farmers selling their soybean products at below cost or having to store them and hoping for a miracle that the soybean price per bushel would increase. So anyway, the America First movement certainly doesn't look in very good state. This is the first point of the MAGA movement that I'm going to cover. So there's 9 more points, and I will cover them in the following days. So if you want to come back for additional analysis, you're welcome to come back for more videos on the MAGA movement. And so at least the America First movement, with President Trump's recent change from Defense Department to War Department, the $1 trillion budget for the Defense Department, the lack of closing of U.S. bases around the globe. We have 850. It's way too many. And the change in position in the Ukraine conflict, pushing us closer to the so-called tripwires, which Steve Bannon talked about, is certainly a sign that the America First movement is in a very bad state. So in order to recover the America First, they need to focus on sensible policies which benefit America and stop sending money overseas to useless wars, which we just continue to do. It's like the crack cocaine of this country, to just invest in one useless, endless war that doesn't benefit our country, is has nothing to do with our national security, and takes away resources from people in this country. And then we have these policies of, tariffs on China, making American products too expensive, so cutting off the export market for American businesses. So all this just seems to be going in the wrong direction, and that's my analysis. If you would like to leave a comment, please do so below. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for joining me for this analysis of MAGA America First, and hope you have a great day. Bye bye.